Hey guys, welcome back to another Airsoft gameplay and a little bit of a review, but not a gun review. This is going to be a field review for LZ Airsoft, also the home of the Steel Reapers in Colorado. They invited me out to play with them one Sunday afternoon, and I'll get into more details later, but just up front, I'd like to say it's a great field and some great people. So, I'll go a little bit more in detail later in the video, but those are kind of my overall summary of the field, and I hope you enjoy. Alright, so I chose this game of all the games I played that afternoon for the kind of field review just because it was the first game that I played on this field, and so it really kind of shows how, kind of like if you're just playing on the field for the first time, kind of how everything looks and how I interacted as a first time player on that field. Now, I will mention I was playing really poorly that day. I don't really have an excuse why. It wasn't terribly windy. I mean, it was a new field, but that shouldn't really affect how I played. But I was just missing a lot of shots and not playing super well. But I also looked around a bunch, and so you can kind of see the layout of the field just by me looking around through the helmet cam perspective and just kind of getting a feel for how the field is laid out and how everything kind of blends together to make the field. Alright, so I did do a lot of scoping in, looking down my scope, and then pulling out of that perspective. I spent a lot of time just kind of bouncing between the two, just based on not being very familiar with this field. But as you can see where I'm looking most of the time, that big kind of stretch or expanse of wood was, even for having almost no leaves in the trees and the shrubs and all that, it made surprisingly good cover for unfortunately the enemy team in this game mode. But I had I think two other, maybe one other sniper with me, and we were taking shots into the woods, and just for some reason that cover ended up working really well with all like the little branches and just the density of it. You could see out of the brush really well, but it was difficult to see into the brush. So that was a pretty great advantage. If you can take that area, then looking out is pretty simple, and then however looking in is really difficult. So if you can take that, it's a really strategic place on this field if you're coming from the far side. So as you've probably seen by now, just from me running to the shelter and just looking around, the surrounding of the field is all the woods and kind of the treed-in areas. And then inside the field, there's a few trees, and there's even a fallen tree, which is kind of fun to play around. But a lot of it is, there's like some plastic bunkers kind of set out aside. There's a few like stacks of the pallets, kind of like what I just ran up to. And it makes for a very dynamic field, I have to say. There are definitely a couple fields that I've been to where it's just one environment or just another environment, like just the woods or just the man-made bunkers, and it's interesting to see the two kind of interacting together, just because it adds a lot of angles that you can shoot from and get shot at from, and so it's kind of an interesting dynamic being able to move down the middle of the field like that. Alright, so I'm back there with my team. There are the two guys in front of me, and I believe there's one guy behind me. I've played with these guys a few times now, and they're pretty great players. And from the spawn point that we were taking, really the best way to keep them in the woods and out of our hair was to kind of line up against those pallets and those barriers and just shoot at really any movement we saw in there.
Do you see him?
I think in this clip, in the upcoming clips, there was one person stepping in front of and like behind a tree a couple times, and I'm pretty sure I missed a whole bunch against him. But this is just kind of to show how like the best way to really keep them at bay is to just kind of line up against there and just maybe not necessarily hit them, but just keep them back so that if it's like a survival based game or a defense based game, you can just keep them there while you can do whatever objective you need to near the middle of the field. Alright, so as you've probably been able to see so far, the way we're shooting into the woods, it keeps us protected with the barriers that we're hiding behind. And if we kind of alternate where we're shooting from, then it kind of really keeps them on their toes, having to watch where we are. And, you know, if we kind of just randomly pop up, take a shot, and then go back down, it really is a good way for the four of us to kind of keep them in the woods and keep them guessing where we are. And it's also just, I feel like, overall, just a nice spot to kind of hang out. That's why the four of us kind of hung out there for quite a while, taking shots into the woods. Alright, so right there, I kind of look off to my right, and you can see just how open the center of the field is. And personally, in my opinion, I would prefer to have like larger bunkers and kind of holes that you could go into and shoot out from. However, that's just kind of my own personal playstyle and taste. And really, with a little bit of getting used to, I was able to manipulate and maneuver between the cover like it was what I'd been doing the whole time. It just was different than what I was used to, so it took a little bit of time to get accustomed to that kind of smaller cover closer together. It just took a little bit getting used to, but once I kind of had the layout for the field, there was absolutely no issue getting between bunker to bunker. And there you can see the tree, the fallen tree that I was talking about earlier. It gives some pretty, surprisingly, for just being a fallen tree, it gives some kind of good cover. Not obviously phenomenal, but it's kind of a nice centerpiece of the field also. I enjoyed it. It's not the best vantage point as far as being able to see the whole field just because you've got so much behind you and you're kind of looking into the side of the field. So now that I've kind of played on that field a little bit more and had a few more games, I know that if there was anybody on the right side of the field, they would have easily been able to see me and get me out, especially since I wasn't actually wearing a camo suitable to that area. I was just wearing my black Cryptex. And so as far as cover, if you know everyone is on the left side, it'll work pretty well for you, but if there's anybody on the right side, that could be kind of difficult. With that little bit of commentary and realizing my mistake of getting right in the middle of the field with no cover behind me, I decided to move back to the left side where just that cover for how they were going for us is probably just the best cover that I could have picked until a little bit later, which I will show you then.
A lot over there, where they're pushing this way. Where are they? Is that a hit?
So right here, just like the professional player that I am, I decide that maybe staying in the same spot for the entire game, especially with the intentions of learning the field, isn't the best idea. So as you can see, I cut across to the right side and end up in some interesting cover. Now, because, like I said earlier, I'm very obviously a professional at this and have everything completely taken care of all the time, my scope cam actually dies as I'm running across the field because, you know, you got to charge those things the night before, or at least have a charger with you, like a portable charger, so that they don't die while you're recording a game. And that's definitely what happened. Ended up dying mid-recording, but it's still interesting to be able to see the field from a head cam perspective.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that I was talking about earlier, this little bunker building type thing. I really enjoyed playing in here. If you get 2 or 3 guys in there or around it, you can really cover all of your angles. There's plenty of cover for you to take odd angles on the outside or from inside. And if you're shooting into this, it's very difficult to exactly pinpoint where somebody is. There's a lot of ways you can move around, out the exit and around the building. You can shoot through the like netting and that sort of thing. And it's really fun to be able to just kind of get so many angles from one building. And I don't know, maybe at some point I can offer to help like build some more on that field because I really enjoyed that structure, and I think that just a few more of those on the field would be absolutely game changing in setting up strategies or objective based gameplay. Alright, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. And just overall, no, my gameplay was really bad. I enjoyed this field a lot. It's a nice field, and there are a few things that I would change if it was my field, but the way they set it up, I have zero issues with. It was different from the fields I'm used to, so it took a little bit of time getting to really get the hang of it, get the layout for the field. But I really enjoyed it. It's a nice open field, but close quarters is possible, which is definitely difficult to balance in a lot of field type situations, getting long range and some closer range games. This was able to balance the two almost seamlessly in just one field layout. And aside from the actual field itself, the people that worked there and were there that day, awesome. Steel Reapers, they're a great team. I really enjoyed playing with them. The owners of the field were super helpful, answering any questions that I had, and I really just enjoyed the whole experience overall. I can definitely recommend LZ Airsoft to anybody within the area, or if you kind of enjoy traveling, it's definitely, I think, a field that would be worth a little bit of travel time to get to. Great players, great field layout, overall a pretty positive experience. I hope you enjoyed this video. That is going to wrap it up for today. But just remember, guys, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.